It is that time. Stakeholders, fellow Californians, colleagues, we are going to start. Colleagues, we do need a quorum, and we have a quorum. 4, 5, 6. Notice we're not looking for a quarrel, just a quorum. We want to thank you all. I hope stretching your legs as we stretch our collective minds was a little bit of help, but we are going to get started again with agenda item 18. Yeah, we're going in alpha order. No, that part of 17 goes to 20. We are staying in numerical order.
52, we're going to item 52. 18 before everything else.
Yes. So we're going to item 18. We're going to ask for our staff colleague, Cherry Zamora, to introduce this item, and we will move from there. Cherry, welcome, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So tab 18 is an action item to accept the final environmental impact report for the Yellow 80 Corridor Improvements Project and to approve the project for future consideration of funding. The Yellow 80 Corridor Improvements Project final environmental impact report analyzed impacts from the entire 20.8-mile project, including the 17 miles for Phase 1, subject to action under tab 17, 19, and 20. Caltrans, the CEQA lead agency, found that the project would have a significant and unavoidable impact on transportation, specifically vehicle miles traveled. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the project benefits outweigh the impact. This action item consists of the Commission's approval of Resolution E2430, which accepts the final environmental impact report for the Yellow 80 Corridor Improvements Project, makes CEQA findings, adopts a statement of overriding considerations, and approves the project for future funding consideration, finding that the project benefits outweigh the impact. Staff recommends approval.
Terry, thank you. From our professional staff, any other comments before we ask Jeremy Ketchum to come forward?
Jeremy is listed on the agenda. I believe he had to leave for travel, but there are folks from the project team from Caltrans who can answer questions.
So I'll clarify so we often list the co-lead on this item. Jeremy will not be providing comments. Caltrans will not be providing a presentation. Cherry's presentation is the only one that we will have.
Wonderful. Cherry, thank you. Cherry, thank you. We are going to open the public hearing portion of item 18 then. I have cards in my hand. Several people asked, do we need to, should we speak again? I leave that completely up to you. These are all separate items so that people can weigh in if they'd like to. We will once again start with people in the room, and then we will go virtual participants. We have set the timing clock once again for 2 minutes. I would ask our first 3 speakers, if they would not mind, please lining up as I call your names. We're going to start with Jesse Lauren with the City of Winters, Oscar Villegas, and Brett Lee. No, it's okay. It's a very long room. You just burned 9 calories. You are welcome. Yes?
No microphone.
We're waiting for your microphone to work.
There we go.
There we go. We've reset the clock as well.
Thank you, Chair Gardino and Board. My name is still Jessie Lauren, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of the City of Winters, SACOG, and Yolo Transportation District. I wanted to thank you for all of your comments in item 17 and to say that I wanted to say a few things about safety. The existing bottleneck at I-80 is an unacceptable safety hazard for our community. As drivers approach the Yolo Causeway, the lanes are dropped, forcing merging and weaving in a very heavily congested area. Because of this configuration, there have been more than 1,000 crashes in the project area in the past 3 years alone, including 7 fatalities. The YOLO 80 project reduces merging and weaving, lessens congestion, and provides signs to inform drivers when collisions have happened. This project will make it safer. Our region shares this Commission's commitment to improving safety and eliminating roadway fatalities for our passengers, truck drivers, trades drivers, those building and maintaining our roads, and this project will help us get us there. So please support this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lauren. Well, we'll start having that contest too. Good. And next is Oscar Villegas. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be very brief. So on behalf of the Yolo County Transportation District, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, Yolo County, and the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority, we are in support of the project. We believe that staff has done a wonderful job of ensuring the integrity of the environmental impact report, certainly because of the 59,000 acre floodplain that exists underneath the project, as well as the very sensitive wildlife area. So we urge your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Villegas. And after Mr. Villegas, we are going to hear from Brett Lee, followed by Supervisor Lucas Frerichs, and then Kiana Valentine. Welcome, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I'll also try to be brief. I just wanted to touch on induced demand. I think there's a very big difference between a general purpose lane and a tolled lane. And I believe that the induced demand idea, the concept, and the practicality is real. And so one might wonder, if you do approve something like this, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if congestion returns, what have we really gained? Aren't we right back where we started from? But I don't believe that would be the case, because importantly, the details matter on this. There will be congestion, but there'll also be an express lane where transit riders will be moving freely. They'll be moving fast, as one of your commissioners had talked about. She had firsthand experience with that. And so that's a very real difference. In addition, there is a source of revenue, an ongoing, growing source of revenue that can be used for VMT mitigation and improved transit, which is very important. And so this is nothing to, this is a very important component that I just wanted to bring up and just say I continue to support this item. Thank you.
Former Mayor Lee, thank you. We're going next to Supervisor Frerichs, followed by Kiana Valentine, followed by John Switolski. Welcome, Supervisor.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair and Commission members. Once again, Lucas Frerichs, Yolo County Supervisor. Just want to thank you really very much so for your thoughtful and sort of eloquent discussion on the last item. I mean, I think that's just first and foremost. I'll abbreviate my comments, associate my comments now with ones I said previously, but just really, really want to thank you all for your hard work and dedication. I mean, we don't get a lot of thanks in some of these jobs, obviously, whether elected officials or appointed officials. And so just the thoughtfulness and the way you all sort of had that really just back and forth was really, really a sight to behold. So appreciate that. And just would ask, representing, of course, Yolo County Transportation District, but also Yolo County itself, ask for your approval of tab 18 for all the eloquent reasons as discussed in your last item. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Frerichs. We're going to hear next from Kiana Valentine with Transportation California, followed by John Switolski, followed by David Martinez. Welcome, Ms. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon again, Commissioners. If you don't mind, I am going to testify on behalf of Transportation California, Rebuild Southern SoCal Partnership, California Alliance for Jobs, and the Associated General Contractors, thus eliminating 3 more public comments on your list. But our organizations are are aligned in support of the staff recommendation on tab 18 and the YOLO 80 managed lanes projects for, as our previous testimony indicated. You know, something from the previous conversation continues to stick with me, and that is that this takes an and, not an or strategy to solve in terms of our transportation, mobility, and climate challenges. Housing is a huge component to making transit and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure functional for the state of California to get people out of their cars. And until such time that we all live closer to well-paying jobs, we're going to need to continue to invest in the surface transportation system. And so for all those reasons, we continue to support this project. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Ms. Valentine. And if the other organizations change their mind, oh, you obviously have not changed your mind. So did you want to just introduce yourself? And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies. Transportation California through Kiana Valentine represents Rebuild SoCal Partnership's point of view and encouragement for support in this item and the following two. So thank you for your time.
thank you, Mr. Switalski. We are going to go next to, and if they could line up, David Martinez with Streets for All, Mark Vukovic with Streets for All, and Jason Baez with Laborers International. Okay. Mr. Martinez, Streets for All? Mr. Vukovic, Streets for All? Mr. Baez just waved that he is fine. Okay, that brings us next to Manny Leon with the California Alliance for Jobs. Also represented earlier as well. Okay, am I coming across that scary? No one wants to approach? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Okay, that would be all of the speaker cards that we currently have in the room. We will now go to online participants. Justin.
Thank you, Chair Gardino. We'll now go to our virtual attendees. First, I'd like to call on Michael Bullock.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair and Commission members. The question about this project that has to be asked and answered in the environmental impact report is, does it conform to the CARB scoping plan? Attorney General Harris said that it must. She said, paraphrasing here, the official plan cannot be ignored because it is about climate stabilization, the objective of CEQA. CEQA environmental impact report should report clearly on the environmental impact. You are failing to conform to the scoping plan, and you admit that you are increasing vehicle miles traveled. So what this plan, this project does is it contributes to the opposite of what needs to be done. It contributes to climate destabilization. That's what is we're trying to avoid at the COP26, COP27, COP28. The climate scientists are very serious. They gave us a very serious target for 2030, and we are ignoring it. And this project helps to fail. Now, you act like, well, that's the best you can do. You have to explain what failure is. Failure is climate destabilization. And everyone should know that that means that processes are put in place that get out of our control. It's human extinction is what it is. Thank you.
Mr. Bullock, that is your time. When you had hit the sentence mark is when your time had run out. So thank you again for weighing in. Justin, our next speaker.
Up next, we have Steve Brodelbo.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members. Steve Bertelbaugh again with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. The concern that I have is that the time that for judicial or for a court challenge to this has not yet expired. So it's probably inappropriate to approve this at this point. One would need to wait until you're sure that there's not going to be a delay as a result of having the matter in court. Thank you.
Mr. Bertlbaugh, thank you again for speaking to 17 and 18. We appreciate you taking the time. Dustin, our next speaker.
Up next, we have Wes Ruderman.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for your time. Wes Ruderman with Active San Gabriel Valley. I'd like to step back for a moment and just respond to staff and a number of commissioners who've really belabored the point that California is #1 in the nation. I think it's important that we think about whether we should be looking at other states or we should be measuring ourselves by international standards. And by the latter, we really are failing on our transportation investments. Our peers in developed countries around the world have really outpaced us in making healthier multimodal living safe, comfortable, and convenient. California has been amazing at leading in other issues. For example, we have one of the lowest smoking rates in the world, and that's because of our leadership in the area of tobacco control. 3 decades of focused investments and evidence-based policymaking have allowed us to enjoy smoke-free workplaces, restaurants, and outdoor dining. These are all things we take for granted nowadays. If we really aspired to catching up with our peers internationally, we would not have spent billions on building over 500 miles of general purpose lane additions over the past decade. And if we truly believed in our commitments to safety, equity, and climate, Caltrans would not be advising the state legislature against flexing $600 million in federal funding to maintain a minimum level of support for the California Active Transportation Program. If we truly believed in making California a state where good public transit was a core value, we would be investing in frequent, reliable regional electric rail now, not ignoring the science, investing billions in more and wider highways. If we truly believe that our children deserve safe routes to school, we would make sure all our children have sidewalks and safe crosswalks to their schools. Here in Los Angeles County, the #1 cause of premature death among children is traffic collisions. As you know, our pedestrian and bicyclist fatality rates have been on the rise.
Mr. Ruderman, please forgive me, but your time has elapsed. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you, sir. Good day.
You're welcome. Dustin?
Up next, we have James Pugh.
Thank you. Mr. Pugh?
Hi, folks. This is Jamie Pugh with NextGen California. Sorry to not be in the room with you folks anymore. Had to run back to the airport. But I just had 2 things I wanted to comment on here. One, I'd like to emphasize once again the statement of overriding consideration being considered in this item, where Caltrans acknowledges that this project mitigates only half of the traffic generated by this project. So if the purpose of this project is to address traffic, we will be taking proportionally 1 step forward and 2 steps back. I'd like to also note that the draft environmental document included more mitigation measures for VMT than what were later included in the final EIR. So that suggests to me that there remains feasible mitigation options on the table that have been removed from the document. And the second thing is a point of confusion for me. There have been numerous comments today that this project conforms to the regional SCS for the SACOG region. And my understanding of the SCS project is that this corridor would have 2 express lanes, 1 a conversion and 1 an addition. None of the alternatives studied in the environmental process reflected that project. So I'd like to just push back a little bit on the assertion that this project aligns with the regional sustainability plan. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh, thank you for calling in, and safe travels home. Dustin, do we have other people online?
So that concludes all virtual hand raises that we have received at this time. I will now move to some written questions that we've received. We received 2 written questions from an anonymous attendee. They write,
and let's, if we wouldn't mind starting the clock at a pace where our translator can keep up with, and the comments have up to the 2 minutes that fairly everyone else had. Thank you.
all right, thank you. First question is, how are endangered species in the area accounted for in the environmental impact report? Second question is, how do we balance the avarice driving additional revenue gained from toll lanes and concerns about the impact of toll lanes on the economy? Thank you. And that concludes all questions received at this time.
And now we're at the end. Why don't we have Caltrans representative address endangered species?
Yes, once again, Sergio Aceves, District 3, the acting director. I will have my deputy director for North Region Environmental address this question, as she is much more in tune with this. Susie?
I'm just eager to see if she then passes it along to someone else to answer.
Yeah, if I looked around, I didn't see anybody else.
There we are. If you wouldn't mind reintroducing yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Susie Mellum. I'm the chief of North Region Environmental.
Thank you.
Which includes District 3. So it's a kind of a broad question, so I'll try to answer it the best I can. I mean, essentially, the project does go through very sensitive habitat. However, we did do Section 7 consultation. We have a couple of endangered species that exist in the area. Our impacts were very minimal, and we have a permit for that, and then we will do some mitigation. So basically, essentially, all of our impacts to endangered species are mitigated for, and are less than significant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. And was there another written comment? I thought I heard you say there were 2, or maybe it was 1 with 2 questions.
There were 2 questions that came in from an anonymous attendee. The second was, how do we balance the avarice driving additional revenue gained from toll lanes and concerns about the impact of toll lanes on the economy?
I'll start the answer to this question, but I know we have the tolling item under tab 19 as well, where we can call CARTA, another agency, to talk about it a little bit. But one of the things that is included in the CARTA, new agency, the CARTA plan is an equity plan that goes along with the tolling component, and we can talk about that a little more once we get under tab 18 or tab 19. Tab 19.
Thank you. If there are, I believe that we have heard from people who have called in. We had already heard from people in the room. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion, turn it over to the dais for questions and comments on item 18. Yes, Commissioner Lugo.
Thank you, Chair Guardino, and I appreciate your attention to making sure that we all get an opportunity to speak up here. I just wanted to comment a little bit in terms of the CEQA process here and what I've been fortunate to learn about it from commission staff, from experts in the modeling space, and from folks who've reached out to me. And what I've learned is this is complicated stuff. It's deeply technical stuff. And we're talking about, different parts of the process needing to use different kinds of metrics based on what information is available. And so what we end up with are these confusingly different answers sometimes. And so I just wanted to say, I'm concerned about how that erodes public trust in terms of, which answer do we go with, and why do we go with that answer as opposed to another? And so I'd really appreciate if, we could have a workshop to get into some of these details a little more, because I've gotten a few kind of quick and dirty presentations about it, but I think we could all benefit from having a longer engagement with some of the experts in this space to help us understand more about the NCST calculator and TDM and these different pieces that, to just help us see. This is a complicated picture, many pieces to fit together, and would appreciate that education. And I'm pleased to see some nods from my fellow commissioners that we could stand it. I think we could handle it.
That sounds like a great suggestion to this colleague. Like you, I think I saw a lot of other heads nodding up and down, not nodding off. Thank you. Excellent suggestion. Director Taylor, you had a comment, and then Commissioner Tiffany.
I was just, for Commissioner Lugo's comment, I was just going to say absolutely, we are happy to host that. And it may be a series of workshops to make sure we're getting the depth of discussion that we want and to allow you all to have questions and answers and tie all of the pieces together.
You mean we won't be experts with one workshop? We'll talk about that offline.
I've been doing this for 18 years.
Commissioner Tiffany.
Thank you, Chair Guardino. I think that Executive Director Taylor maybe can address this, but one of the comments we just heard had to do with something to do with having to wait out the time for a judge to make a ruling, and I think you've addressed this previously on another matter, so maybe you might address that. Thank you.
I will, and I'll take this opportunity if there aren't other technical questions that you all would like me to address to. Okay. To talk about, well, I was going to close out with all of them. There are a couple of things that I need to say before we round out.
And if mine's still last,
Perfect.
I will ask it.
Thank you. So, to your question, Commissioner Tiffany, CEQA does not require the Commission to wait until that legal challenge is filed. It actually requires the Commission to consider this CEQA document before our discretionary action to allocate dollars. That's the first question. To the question of, let's see, what other question was there? To the inclusion of all feasible mitigation measures. This environmental document does include all feasible mitigation measures. Feasible is defined in CEQA, and this document follows the law. If I could ask, just very quickly, if I could ask the Deputy Executive Director, Casey Lozon from SACOG, to come to the podium to simply confirm that this project is consistent with the SACOG Regional Transportation Plan / Sustainable Community Strategy. That's the list I have right now.
Thank you, Executive Director Taylor. Good afternoon, Commission. Casey Lozon, Deputy Executive Director at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. To the question, is this project consistent with our Sustainable Community Strategy? The answer is yes. It is at the time of the project's development, and when we were developing our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy, there was an HOV considered in the Metropolitan Transportation portion of it, and there was a 2x2 that was included in the Sustainable Community Strategy. We have analyzed this, working very closely with our partners, and see that the project as proposed is implementing our SES and is consistent.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. If I may, once during public testimony, and I believe once from the dais, the April 24th letter from the California Air Resources Board came up. Could you, so that our stakeholders in the room and online have a better visibility into that letter and its contents, could you just take a moment? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Guardino. First, I'll maybe start with our letter, which did provide a response to the letter we received from the California Air Resources Board on March 20th, our last commission meeting. We did provide a response to the California Air Resources Board, which included the responses that Caltrans has provided to some of the questions about modeling and other technical details. The California Air Resources Board has responded to say they have no further questions or comments on the matter.
And that, of course, as it should be, is a document that's publicly available, both our response as well as their response back. And I encourage people to look at both of those documents. Great. Seeing no other questions or comments on item 18 from the Commission, I would be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we move ahead with this.
Commissioner Tiffany, thank you. Vice Chair?
A second.
Vice Chair Grisby, thank you. There is a motion and a second on the table. Is there further discussion, my commissioner colleagues? Seeing none, do we need a roll call or can we do a voice vote?
We can do a voice vote.
Great. All those in favor of item 18 on the CEQA document, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Staff, Cherry, thank you for all your hard work on this item. Colleagues, for such a good discussion throughout the day so far. I shouldn't caveat that. Our discussions are always great. And we are going to move on to item 19. And if I may, several people who had written on cards 17 through 20 have spoken with our staff and texted pulling their cards. But I want to emphasize, you still have every right and opportunity if you want to speak to item 19 and item 20. We don't want to in any way suggest that we don't encourage you to have that right. With that, we're going to item 19. Forgive me, I think that's Ahmed, and that is on the toll facility. Ahmed, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Tab 19 is an action item to approve the tolling application for the Yolo 80 Corridor Improvement Project Phase 1 in Yolo County. On March 15, 2024, the Commissioner received an application from the Capital Area Regional Toll Authority, also known as CARTA, a joint powers of authority established between the Yolo Transportation District, the Sacramento Area of Government, and the California Department of Transportation. This application pertains solely to the Yolo 80 Corridor Improvement Phase 1 and seeks authorization for tolling one lane in each direction along Interstate 80 spanning from Richards Boulevard to US 50. The Capital Area Regional Toll Authority will need to request tolling authority for each subsequent phase. Assembly Bill 194 requires the Commission to assess toll applications to ensure that each application meets 6 criteria. The criteria are as follows. A demonstration that the proposed toll facility will improve the corridor performance by increasing passenger throughput or reducing delays for freight shipment and traveler, especially those traveling by carpool, vanpool, and transit. A requirement that the proposed toll facility is contained in a constrained portion of conforming regional transportation plan. For project involving the state highway system, evidence of cooperation between the applicable regional transportation agency and Caltrans. A discussion of how the proposed toll facility meets the requirement of the Streets and Highway Code Section 149.7. A complete project initiation document for the proposed toll facility. Complete funded plan for the development and operation of the toll facility. The tolling application received by the Commission demonstrates that the Yolo 80 Corridor Improvement Project Phase 1 meets all the criteria outlined in Assembly Bill 194. Commission staff is pleased to report that CARTA identified equity as one of its top priorities in the tolling application. Furthermore, CARTA has committed to develop an equity program with the communities it serves. CARTA intends to work with its partner transportation agency in the region to develop an equity program that seeks to maximize benefits and minimize the burden of the project for vulnerable communities that experience high transportation burdens and other disparities. Assembly Bill 194 further stipulates that the Commission must conduct at least one hearing to receive public comments at or near the proposed facility. The Commission held a hearing to receive public comments on April 9th of this year. The hearing was held at the Arthur F. Turner Community Library in the city of West Sacramento and via webinar. The hearing took place near the project study area. The location of the hearing was selected for its proximity to significant employment hubs and convenient access to public transportation. Additionally, the webinar access was provided to maximize public participation. Commission staff compiled, reviewed, and considered all comments received before making the recommendation before you today. Staff recommend the California Transportation Commission to approve the toll application submitted by the Capital Area Regional Toll Authority. The recommendation is supported by the finding that the application meets the criteria for approval outlined in Assembly Bill 194 and the Commission's guideline for toll facility project applications. Thank you.
Mr. Gonum, thank you. How will the impacts of the tolling authority be implemented?
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. How will the impacts of the tolling authority be implemented?
Perhaps we can call on Kathleen from CARTA. Perhaps Kathleen, you can speak to the equity impacts and the equity plan as well.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Chair Guardino. My name's Kathleen Hanley, and I'm part of the staff at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I also currently do all the staff work for the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority with that new agency. So did a lot of staff work provided for tab 19 and happy to answer this question. So as Ahmed mentioned, CARTA is committed to doing a comprehensive equity program sort of consistent with where industry standard is moving, looking at a lot of precedents from other regions within our state. I think what's important is that we're a unique place and equity is really in the details, right? So we want to really take the time to speak with our community and understand at a detailed level what they're really looking for from something like a toll network and what would a real benefit be. I think our considerations echo a lot of the things that you're hearing at your Interagency Equity Advisory Committee on not just, the real impacts of the roadway itself and the price of the toll, but things like enforcement and interactions with law enforcement, training for staff for equity considerations. So we've really outlined a comprehensive program that we're going to be implementing over the next couple of years in partnership with our community.
I want to thank you. I wanted to make sure you had that chance. And colleagues, forgive me for stepping out of turn, but while we were doing the report, I wanted to draw that out. Appreciate that. With that, that is our staff report. We are going to open the public hearing, both in the room and online. We're going to start in the room with Yolo County Supervisor Lucas Frerichs. Supervisor? Okay. Oh, and let me, as he walks 2.5 miles up to the microphone, next is William Walker, and after that, David Martinez.
And Mr. Chair and members, the Sacramento region is the last, but certainly not least, of the 5 largest metro areas in California who are utilizing managed lanes. And so this is a necessity to form this tolling authority. We're fortunate to have a culture of collaboration in the Sacramento region, and as you've heard earlier, not only have we included Caltrans as a voting member of the tolling authority, but also other transportation agencies are added in as ex officio members, and will fully join as additional managed lanes projects come online. Ask respectfully for your approval of the tolling authority application in tab 19. Thank you.
Supervisor, thank you for joining us today. Next is William Walker, followed by David Martinez, followed by Mark Vucevic. Welcome, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. My name is William Walker, and I'm here to comment on tab 19, the Yolo 80 Corridor Improvement Project Phase 1 request for approval of the tolling application. I'm a California resident because transit's not always optimal. I drive a lot, more than I'd like to. I tend to be in different parts of the state. I tend to have to pay this toll. I probably qualify for California aid programs because of how low my income is because I'm a graduate student. And I don't think that we intend for that portion of the community to be paying these fees, but we do. And it's great that there's a new tolling authority, however oxymoronic that sentence might sound. But, when people have concerns about the freeway, they tend to go to their city or county that they live in or the state. And so now we're creating another transportation authority in a space that traditionally just has the Yolo County Transit Authority Unitrans if you live in Davis, and probably regional transit, because if you're on this toll lane, you're probably headed to Sacramento. It's really important that we not just speak about the equity work that you're doing in the community, but that you show it. And what does that look like? All I see is a tab number on the screen. And I recently did a presentation about the equity work that I get to do on behalf of this committee that I serve on, as well as the work I do as a university researcher. And there are pictures of the folks that I interact with. And I'd like to see that same accountability held to folks who come to this authority or to this commission for authority approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and a great use of your 2 minutes. You were right on the dot. We next is David Martinez with Streets for All, followed by Mark Vucevic of Streets for All, followed by Jason Baez with Laborers International. I see Mr. Baez waving off his card, and that is fine. Mr. Martinez or Mr. Vucevic? Okay, not seeing them. Just want to make sure that we're not robbing anyone of their opportunity to speak. And then our last current speaker card, Kiana Valentine.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Kiana Valentine on behalf of Transportation California, Rebuild SoCal Partnership, California Alliance for Jobs, and the Associated General Contractors representing the statewide transportation construction industry in support of this item as well. As I spoke to earlier, this project is different in many ways than a run-of-the-mill highway capacity project would have been or could have been just a matter of years ago or decades ago. And one of those ways is the management of the system. And so the industry is supportive of managed lanes when the right factors are there, and it's going to produce the sorts of outcomes that we are trying to achieve, which is reducing traffic congestion, addressing environmental concerns, creating revenue opportunities to help incentivize mode shift, creating other opportunities for mobility, and then safety issues. And so for those reasons, we encourage your support of this item. Thank you.
Great. I only have one question. If you're representing 4 organizations, I hope you're getting 4 paychecks. We'll talk offline. Great. Okay. Believing that we've addressed all speaker cards, we're going to go virtually. Justin, do we have anyone virtually who would like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gardino. I do see one virtual hand raised at this time. I'd like to call on Michael Bullock.
Yes, okay, thank you. Honorable Commission, the toll collection method that is described there is really the wrong approach. 10 years ago or more, your commission should have worked for replacing the very regressive California gasoline tax with a means-based road use charge. So what I'm saying is that the road use charge, which is inevitable because we're moving away from gasoline, I think everybody can figure that out. We need a means-based road use charge that has a lot of features, protects privacy, and also it's not just collection, it's also determines where that money should go. Where should that road use charge go? Earlier, I asked you a question about the gasoline tax revenues and so on and so forth. And you told me that California could not spend general fund money on building roads. Well, that's very nice. However, let's look at the municipal governments. They can, and they do. They impose, for example, sales taxes, which are very regressive because they have to maintain roads. Now, a road use charge should not only take into account a lot of things, including the income of the driver of the car, the weight of the car, and just multiple features, but also where should that road go? you know, when I drive my car in Oceanside on Oceanside streets, Oceanside doesn't get any money for that. And they should. And so our municipal governments are struggling, but they don't speak to the root cause of the problem, which is this idea that you have here. Thank you.
Mr. Bolick, that is your 2 minutes. One, I greatly appreciate you speaking to the item for the substance of what you said, but two, it also allows me to clarify so that there isn't any confusion. Overwhelmingly, California's transportation systems are built with dedicated revenue streams. I don't believe anyone said that we could not use general fund monies. Overwhelmingly, we don't, but that doesn't mean we cannot. And sometimes we do, as with the active transportation program funds that at our recommendation, the legislature and the governor moved forward on last year. So I really appreciate you speaking up. It allows us to clarify real time in a way that I hope you find of value. With that, do we have other people calling in to speak virtually, Justin?
No, that concludes all requests for this item.
Great. Then I'm looking at our vice chair and then our past chair, Norton. Vice Chair Grisby? Oh, thank you. Thanks for catching that. Past Chair Norton.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple questions on the microphone about the equity programs. And I did want to say, when I was referring to young people like my kids, neither one of them, one's about to be 26 and one's about to be 22, neither one of them have their driver's license. They take transit everywhere. They're constantly talking about its superiority and that managed lanes have been one of the best ways to encourage rideshare, and that even an equity program about becoming that additional driver, having a value for carpools is really, really important. I wanted to ask you about your unbanked program, some of the because these are really innovative, and I think the fact that you're coming together as a comprehensive regional program is really, really important. And so I want to ask you a little bit more about your equity programs and how they relate to the transit systems of all the agencies that you represent.
Sure, I appreciate the question. So I want to be really clear with the commissioners that we are going to be in the process of developing.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for our online audience, would you mind reintroducing
Yes,
yourself?
I am back. This is Kathleen Hanley. I work at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, and I also staff the Capital Area Regional Tolling Authority.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, so I want to be really clear with the commissioners and folks in the room and online that we're going to be going through the process of developing and formalizing our equity program as this project moves forward. We wanted to make sure all the steps are in place, right? This body is taking a lot of actions today on behalf of the people of California to advance this project. And so we've been, slotting our equity program development into that place. So a lot of what's represented in the AB 194 application are things that we've heard along the way that are important to our community. And this issue of making sure that cash is still an available option and accessible is something that all tolling authorities in California have.
Kathleen, I'm so sorry. Yeah, would you mind?
So sorry.
For a hardworking translator?
Okay, so we will definitely have an option for folks who want to use cash to pay for the system. And it will be well integrated with transit. What the exact mechanics of that are going to depend on the feedback we receive as we develop the program.
Kathleen, thank you. Don't go too far. Great. Are there other questions or comments? I'm going to go to our vice chair, and obviously at an appropriate time looking for a motion as well. Vice Chair Grisby?
Thank you very much, Chair Guardino. Make some general comments. For us to reach our greenhouse gas reduction goals, we need to have pricing, right? And this is a great way to acclimate our citizens to the notion of pricing by introducing these lanes across the state. So I'm really happy this is happening. I also am very happy that different regions get to test this out and try different ways to ensure equity. That way we can have a kind of a warehouse of ideas that's being developed over time to perfect this. So this is all really good news to me, and I'm very supportive of the project having tolling.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Great. Any other comments? As again, at an appropriate time, we will be seeking a motion.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Cruz.
And I support the concept of tolling as well. And as we see a decline, obviously, in gas tax revenue, we will be looking at alternatives. And I'm hopeful, based on experience in other states, that this can be an option. And hopefully, at some point, we can attract private investment, where we can build these facilities out using private money. But I'm also concerned with the equity issues and what the ultimate cost would be on working and traveling families who use these facilities, and would be, focused on what those elements and provisions sort of look like as we develop a plan. So the tolling doesn't disproportionately affect the folks who need to be on these facilities to get to and from work. So thank you for your work.
I think we also, thank you, Commissioner Cruz. I think we also have an opportunity. I've always found if one person asks a question, it was probably a question that others have as well. And earlier on today, we thanked and recognized Commissioner Bradshaw for his willingness to take on the role of chair of our road charge task force that was established by legislation about 15 years ago to look at that handoff between a diminishing gas tax and a road charge to balance out the ongoing and growing needs of 39 million residents of our state. So if Director Taylor would like to take a moment, perhaps supplemented by new Chair Bradshaw, about the role of that legislation and the task force, so that, again, Mr. Bolick asked the question about why aren't we doing that? The answer is we are, but you deserve more than that, and others may have that question as well. Would you mind taking that moment?
Sure. So the Commission has for many years had a road charge technical advisory committee, and it is really looking at that question of, as we see that revenues are diminishing as we transition to a cleaner vehicle fleet, which is a great thing. It is helping us meet our climate goals. It is vital to us meeting our climate goals. We do rely on the gas tax, and the less we buy gas, the less taxes generated, the less revenue is generated for transportation. This is a conversation that is happening in many states as well as California to talk about how do we transition to something sustainable in terms of transportation funding. And we're not just talking about what many people think is how are we going to widen the roads more. We're talking about how are we going to keep our bridges standing upright and the public safe. And so those are the things that the Technical Advisory Committee is looking at, is how do we functionally, technically transition to that more sustainable road charge, whatever it may be, to ensure that the traveling public remains safe as we continue to define and identify how we invest the funds that the public has so graciously invested in us.
Director Taylor, thank you. And one of the reasons that I was so excited that Commissioner Bradshaw was willing to chair the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee is not only his desire to work hard and how articulate he is, but the deep passion he has shown about Californians often traveling a long way, working Californians, and how we make that balance as well. So if you'd like to share any perspective for Mr. Bolick and others about that role and the work of that task force, I wanted to provide you with that opportunity before we seek a potential motion. I shouldn't be presumptuous, a potential motion on item 19.
You had me at hello, Brother Chairman. So, yeah, and I appreciate it. And, you know, there's always more work to do. But there's been ongoing conversations about the effects, you know, when we talk about equity, the effects of road use charge and tolls. And, you know, it's not that it's bad programs. We see pilot programs out there towards equity, which is correct, but that bases it all on the federal poverty level. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone here that in California, the cost of living is so high that not most, but a sizable number including a lot of construction workers that are using the roadways, would not qualify for any subsidy. So you see a real gap here. Whereas one of the ideas I had that I will bring to the committee with more detail is that when you look at, in most cases, how affordable housing is measured, it looks at the area median income, for example, which could be one tool towards what would be equitable for working class folks, right, that aren't rich, just to be blunt, but also helps uplift those that may very well fall under the federal poverty line. So it's not about taking away from that very important subsidy, but how do we have an equitable based on income, right, by the area that's fair, you know, so people pay their fair share based on what they earn, and also use that as a driver to create more opportunity as we do more and more transportation. So that's one of the things I would like to bring to it, and I don't know if we'll have to get some kind of special deal with the franchise tax board, but that's a conversation for another day. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw, and Director Taylor, if you'd like to supplement that, it's always helpful.
Just one item. So one of the things that the state of California is doing to investigate is how do we collect revenues? How do we do different things across this in a technical way? Because we have to know all of the technical details before we actually step through the door to actually implement the program. One of the things that is happening right now is an open call for participants for a pilot program that falls under Senate Bill 339 by Senator Wiener. If you'd like to participate in that road charge pilot, you can go to caroadcharge.com to sign up for that.
Great advice. It's turning interest into action, and it helps to advance these issues that we truly have to grapple with in our state. Past Chair Eager, you had a question or a comment?
I do. Having gone through the hearing on tolling, we had a lot of people come and ask questions about best practices. So I know this is, I'm a fan of tolling. This is one program that's trying some new things and looking at a lot of different issues. I know when we looked at the 405, they had some different issues that they were dealing with and their tolling. I think it was it the 39, 36? 37. They were also looking at the equity issues and how do we toll. Do we have a subcommittee at Caltrans that are looking at best practices for tolling? And I know it's going to be different in different parts of the state, but how is it that we are looking at all of those things, saying, okay, for the next one, here's some good practices and bad practices?
So we do have a managed lane subcommittee that has been active for some time. We interact with the commission. There are external groups as well that we interact with on a regular basis on this. And so I think it's CTOC, but it's the tolling, those that have tolling authority currently, we interact with them and pulling those things in to look at what we're doing. And of course, then we'll be working with Cardinal as the newest tolling authority. But this will be the first time we'll be part of that tolling authority. So we are still going to be learning as we go forward as well.
And may
So
I could just add something to what
Sure.
Mike said before you ask your question. One of the things that the commission is doing, as well as we are looking to update our SB 194 tolling guidelines, we're looking at some of those best practices so that we can share them across the state as well.
That was going to be my question, is what are those next steps? How do we share it? It's not okay just to have it, we have to share it. Yes.
Seeing no other microphones lit on questions or comments, if it's the will of this body, I'd be seeking a motion.
I'll move for approval, Brother Chairman.
There is a motion by Commissioner Bradshaw, a second by past Chair Eager. Further discussion on the motion. Great. The motion again is on the tolling authority. With that, and seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please say, oh, Matthew, your microphone is lit.
He has nothing.
Okay, great.
That's power, right? See that? Stop the whole machine. That's awesome.
Commissioners, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item 19 passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gunham. We appreciate your work. Kathleen, thank you for your hard work. With that, we are moving forward, if it is okay with everyone, with item 20, which is, of course, the $105 million. So let's go ahead first with our staff report. Matthew Yasgat, that's why your light was on. You were anticipating. Thank you, Matthew, for your hard work. We're eager to hear your report.
Thank you, Chair Guardino and Commissioners. Tab 20 is an action item to approve a trade corridor enhancement program allocation of $100,000 for right-of-way support and $104,900,000 for construction for the YOLO 80 Corridor Improvements Project Phase 1, a total allocation of $105 million. Commissioners, before I recommend approval of this item, please note the following changes from the posted agenda. As you'll notice on the change list, which has been posted, please note that the project has secured right-of-way certification as of May 9th, 2024. It was listed as pending, I believe, when the agenda was posted. Additionally, as I noted during my presentation of tab 17, as well as Director Taylor confirming, please note that I will be recommending approval of the YOLO 80 Corridor Improvements Project Phase 1 Project Baseline Agreement, Resolution TCEP P232406B, along with the approval of this item, tab 20. Please note the correction noted on the change list for the baseline agreement, which you would notice listed under tab 17 of the change list. Staff recommends your approval of tab 20 as I just presented.
Matthew, I'm pretty convinced on the $104,900,000. Not sure about the $100,000. Matthew, just turn off your mic. Just having a little fun at 4:57.
I have a feeling there are about 20 people behind me that were very nervous with that comment.
They fell out of their chairs.
That's okay. I also know CPR. Okay. We want to, again, make sure that everyone who would like to speak is heard, and heard in a safe space. I believe we have a couple of cards of people who wrote 17 through 20, and we leave it up to you as to whether you would like to speak. And we welcome others who didn't fill out a card yet, if you would like to do so. So I'm going to go over names. If you're still here, please come forward, or let me know that you don't want to. Council Member Jesse Lauren of Winters, followed by Oscar Villegas, followed by Brett Lee. Not yet seeing. Okay. You don't have to, again. And then John Switowski, followed by Manny Leon, or their spokesperson, Kiana Valentine. Great. Kiana, welcome. I'm sorry, Ms. Valentine, welcome. Oh, we need to turn on your mic. There we are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Kiana Valentine, on behalf of Transportation California, the California Alliance for Jobs, Rebuild SoCal Partnership, and the Associated General Contractors, for the good of the order, officially weighing in support for this item as well, and encourage your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valentine. Also, having indicated an interest in items 17 through 20, Yolo County Supervisor Lucas Frericks, who is coming forward. David Martinez from Streets for All. Mark Vuksevich from Streets for All. And Jason Baez with Laborers International. Supervisor, welcome.
As previously discussed today, investing in this corridor is going to improve our economy, support working families, provide better transit options, and it also strikes the right balance between sustainability, social equity, and economic benefits. We believe it deserves your support and urge the Commission to approve the staff recommendation awarding the $105 million to the YOLO 80 Managed Lanes project. Thanks very much.
Supervisor, thank you for making the long trek. With that, David Martinez, Streets for All. I don't see Mr. Martinez coming forward. Mark Vucevic, Streets for All. Again, not seeing him coming forward. Jason waved us off. So thank you, Mr. Bias. We appreciate you being here still. Let me see. Doug, is there anything else? Or Justin, is there anyone online who would like to speak to item 20?
Yes, we just received a written comment on this question.
Sure. So no verbal, just one written.
One written.
We will start the clock at a conversational pace, up to 2 minutes, please.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So much. Again, for Michael Bullock, they write, the CTC agree that the RUC needs to be means-based, value-priced with congestion pricing algorithm to eliminate congestion when needed. The Bike Ped Committee of Oceanside has adopted a detailed resolution to support replacing the California gas tax with a means-based road use charge. Would you like to see it? If so, email me at mikebullock@earthlink.net. And that concludes the comment.
Mr. Bullock, thank you for your interest in staying with us all day, and it sounds like you'd like a response in email. Director Taylor, can we work with either one of our sister organizations or our staff to respond to Mr. Bullock's question?
Of course.
Great. That's okay with everyone? Good. Mr. Bullock, thank you again for writing with your question. Okay. Item 20. We are looking for commissioner comment, question, or a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Past Chair Eager made the motion. Commissioner Tiffany made the second. Yes. Gotta tell you, I love my colleagues. Okay. We have a motion and a second on item 20. Are there any questions, comments before we move to a vote? Okay. With that, all those in favor of approving item 20, the request for $105 million for state-administered TCEP YOLO 80 Corridor Improvements Project Phase 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. And did I capture the part of 17 that we were moving to here?
Yes.
Good. Want to make sure. Okay. And all those who are opposed and abstentions, let the record show that that passes unanimously. I want to thank you all for participating. I want to thank you all for participating as we work together and not always agreeing, but not being disagreeable, to do our best, as frail and as human as we are, to build a better California for everyone. Thank you for participating. If it's okay with everyone, past Chair Eager, who I have a great habit of listening to, wondered if there is interest with our stakeholder partners, staff, and commission colleagues to try to get through 21, 22, and 23. Oh, no. Oh, that's, yeah, 22 and 23. And I'd really leave that up.
We can do information.
Okay.
Yeah. I might ask if something between 5:30 and 6:30.
By the way, as several of our guests leave, I want to thank you for participating in making our state better. Thank you. Thank you. I know you have a long drive back. Please stay safe. Okay. Is it okay with colleagues and staff to hear 22 and 23 and our information items? Great. Let's do that. 22, Lori Waters. Lori, it's always good to see you.
Yes.
Love your new, are those new glasses? Is it kind of cool?
No, I just lose them and have to get new ones. Okay.
Great. And by the way, if it's okay, we know we like to build community, and that often means conversation. But if you wouldn't mind taking the conversation out into the hallway, then we can continue the people's business. I'll wait, but if we could move the conversations out into the hallway. I don't want to diminish the conversations, just need to move them so that people can hear. Thank you. Ms. Waters?
Yes. Commissioners, item 22 is an action item to adopt the 2025 Active Transportation Program Guidelines, Metropolitan Planning Organization Competitive Component for the San Joaquin Council of Governments. The Active Transportation Program allows for MPOs to propose guidelines for administering their MPO competitive component of the program. The MPO guidelines must be consistent with the state guidelines, but they are allowed discretion in certain areas such as asking for a supplemental call for projects and project selection criteria and weighting. These guidelines must be reviewed by Commission staff and adopted by the Commission. The San Joaquin Council of Governments is requesting adoption of their guidelines at this meeting so that they can have their regional call for projects while the state call is still going on. The San Joaquin Council of Governments' full guidelines are included as Attachment B to the book item. In summary, the San Joaquin Council of Governments is requesting in their guidelines to require all applicants to submit a supplemental application, use additional evaluation criteria and weighting, allows agencies to submit a scaled-down version of the state-submitted project through their regional competition, as long as they provide an explanation of how the revised project will provide a proportionate level of benefits. And they will limit any single agency to funding of no more than 50% of the San Joaquin Council of Governments 2025 Active Transportation Program regional share of funding. Commission staff reviewed their guidelines and found them consistent with the statewide guidelines. Staff recommends adoption of the San Joaquin Council of Governments 2025 Active Transportation Program Guidelines.
Ms. Waters, thank you. And you work so well with our stakeholders. Appreciate you doing that as well. With that, let's start with if there are public comments either in the room or virtually. In the room, did we collect any cards, Douglas? No, thank you. Justin, virtually?
Virtually, we did not receive a request to comment on the item. Thank you.
Great. Are there questions or comments with Commissioner colleagues? Looking for a motion then?
So moved.
Moved by Past Chair Eager, seconded by Commissioner Cruz. Any questions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. I'll let the record show Mr. Bradshaw had to take an urgent call and has stepped out as we count the votes for our minutes. With that, let's please, great job, Lori. Thank you. Let's move on to item 3, procedures for leasing airspace for the use of broadband infrastructure. Tim Silverman, you're already in position, even though name tag says Jerry Zamora. I think you're having some identity issues.
Thank you for that correction.
Yeah. It was okay with us, but Cherry was a little upset.
I figured. Just a quick correction, tab 23.
Did I not say 23? Forgive me. Thank you for catching whatever I said.
So Commissioners, good early evening. Tab 23 is an information item related to procedures for leasing airspace for the use of broadband infrastructure. I'll be quick since we're a little bit late tonight. As you're aware, Governor Newsom signed broadband legislation in July 2021, establishing the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, or MMBI. This was the first step to creating a statewide open access, network to help build infrastructure to provide a reliable and resilient broadband network across the state. Broadband infrastructure will be installed within Caltrans airspace as directed by Executive Order N7320 and in accordance with Senate Bill 156. Airspace leases will be required to accommodate these installations, subject to the California Transportation Commission approval. Jeff Wiley, Caltrans, and I hope I get this correct, Acting Chief Middle Mile Broadband Initiative Office. Okay, he'll give me the correct one. Jeff is here to discuss the procedures for leasing airspace for the use of broadband infrastructure. I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you.
There we go. You hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Good. So hello, Chair Gardino, Commissioners. I'm Jeff Wiley, the Assistant Deputy Director for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative at Caltrans. There you go, Tim. I appreciate you allowing me time to present this informational item related to the department's future ask on license agreements for the middle mile broadband within the state highway system right-of-way. Next slide. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide information on what the middle mile broadband network is, what the license agreement is, why the middle mile broadband initiative will require license agreements, and lastly, what we will bring forward in the future for your consideration and approval. Next slide. So why is the middle mile broadband initiative needed? Next slide. From economic stability to education to social support, specific agency, broadband and the digital services that it enables are today intrinsically tied to the collective health and equity outcomes. Yet there's still a digital divide within the state. If you look at the graphs, you can see 17% of the population does not have access to broadband. Of those that do have access, 48% are under the 100 megabits per second speed, which is the speed recommended for those wanting to do things like attend class remotely or have a remote doctor's appointment or other items that require a lot of data to be transmitted quickly. When looking at our rural communities, the numbers worsen. 49% of the rural communities do not have access to high-speed networks. Then when you look at tribes, only 28% of them have high-speed network access. Next slide. In July of 2021, Senate Bill 156, which you'll hear me say throughout the rest of the presentation, SB 156, became law. It provides a multi-billion-dollar investment to establish the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative with the purpose of expanding the reach of high-speed broadband with the creation of an open access statewide network. There are three main goals of the open access middle mile network. Prioritize connectivity to unserved and underserved communities, provide affordable open access middle mile broadband infrastructure to enable last mile networks throughout the state. And then also leverage existing networks and construction projects to build networks where possible. Within 156, were also articles to support streamlined development, design, and implementation of a statewide open access high-speed broadband network. It stated that the middle mile network serves a public purpose. It stated that the network is a state priority. It included provisions for statutory exemptions to the CEQA for middle mile infrastructure. It also states that any lease of public property for the purposes of the statewide open access middle mile broadband network may be made for less than fair market value. Next slide. So I've kind of been using the term middle mile, and I want to be able to clarify what that middle mile is. So if you look at the slide, you think of the first mile as the global internet. It's all the satellites, the servers, the public cloud type of thing that hold the data of the internet. And then if we call last mile the network of users that's accessing that data and those sites and that information. The middle mile is what allows the users of the last mile to access all the data and the information kept in the first mile. So it basically acts like a digital highway, carrying data from the global network ports to the supermarkets and stores, the local internet service providers that we all use to access the goods of the internet. Next slide. It's the middle mile portion of the digital highway that needs to get built so that more people have access to those goods and services. So the next couple of slides, I'm going to show you what the network looks like, or plan to look like. So if we go to the next slide. This map, all those dark black lines, reflects the network that California is creating through the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. As you can see, the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative is an enormous statewide endeavor. And the result of that endeavor will be the creation of a statewide open access network of broadband infrastructure that establishes a reliable and resilient backbone system for all the communities to draw from to improve local connectivity, including the un- and underserved Californians. The initiative is funded through federal funding through the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, that requires funds to be obligated by December of 2024, and those funds are to be expended by December of 2026 for construction. So this is an aggressive timeline to complete this substantial amount of work. Next slide. Since the passage of SB 156, the California Department of Technology, who is the lead agency and the project owner, has been working to efficiently capitalize on federal funding, maximize network coverage, and identify opportunities to expedite broadband deployment while avoiding duplicative efforts. To that end, the Department of Technology is partnering with private entities, third-party joint builders, to install and construct the middle mile network. This map reflects how these pieces of the network, the joint builds, the leased miles, purchased miles, and the Caltrans build, that's all the different colors that are on there, will come together to produce the middle mile broadband network. Note that the leases shown on this map are actual leasing of infrastructure. It's not the leasing of right-of-way that I came here to discuss today. So next slide. So Commission Resolution G1943 allows Caltrans to negotiate and enter into leases with the Department of Technology, since they meet the requirements outlined in the resolution by being a public entity and the improvements being installed serve a public purpose. However, Caltrans does not have the authority to directly negotiate with the private entities that are the joint builders for the Department of Technologies that they're partnering with. The rest of the presentation is going to focus on what the department is proposing as an approach to setting the leasing procedures for the broadband infrastructure. So I was trying to set the table with a little bit of background for you. I'll get into the meat of what we're talking about. Next slide. The department is looking at aspects of the procedure established with the Wireless Telecommunications Program as a basis for broadband infrastructure license agreement. The wireless program allows telecommunication carriers to install and operate telecommunication facilities within the state right-of-way. Under the wireless program, Commission Resolution G1904, the Commission retains the authority to approve the use of the operating right-of-way for telecommunication carriers through the approval of a master license agreement, which the department can then use to initiate and approve license agreements. Next slide. I also wanted to kind of clarify why we're coming in as an airspace lease. It seems kind of odd, but it's because Caltrans airspace encompasses the entire area above, at grade, and below the state highway right-of-way. So any lease within that bubble, if you will, is an airspace lease. So for the broadband infrastructure, which when you look at the slide is really that ditch on the side of the road, it's going to be underground, and the license agreement for that is still categorized as an airspace lease. So, next slide. So what is the license agreement? Why do we need it? The license agreement is a revocable agreement approved by the Commission that memorializes the builder-owner responsibilities for the infrastructure. It covers things like the conditions of the use, the infrastructure footprint, duration of the license, and relocation and terms for vacating that right-of-way. The license agreement is required as part of our encroachment permit process when there is a non-transportation use of the highway right-of-way system. The license agreement basically establishes the license under which the licensee is able to utilize a section of the Caltrans right-of-way covered by that agreement. Next slide. Another part of establishing the license agreement is determining the license fee. That fee is established by looking at the fair market value for the right-of-way under consideration when fair market value is being applied. Caltrans is developing a fair market value fee matrix to cover this. The matrix will provide a per mile value charged for the lease. It will be by county with a per mile rate listed for each corridor within that county. This allows the rate to reflect actual property values using recent property sales. And lastly, it will provide annual escalations over the next 10 years. For broadband infrastructure installations, the application of fair market value will be dependent upon whether the infrastructure installation serves a public purpose. The intent will be if a broadband infrastructure installation meets the public purpose terms under SB 156, the department will lease the segment at less than fair market value. This would include the joint broadband infrastructure that is being installed at the same time. If the installation does not meet the SB 156 terms, the lease will be for fair market value, and the fair market value lease fee matrix will be used. Next slide. I'm going to take a little bit to touch on public purpose. As mentioned previously, the administration and the legislature recognized the essential nature of broadband in our lives and took steps to expand access to it. I want to provide some additional context around the public purpose aspect of broadband, especially for the middle mile broadband network. Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N73-20 to improve digital connectivity across the state and help bridge the digital divide for millions of Californians who still lack adequate broadband service. That executive order recognized broadband and the role it plays by stating it is an essential component to digital equity, and it is essential for public safety, public health, education, workforce development, and economic resilience. SB 156 went further for the middle mile broadband network by providing additional provisions, including a definition for open access, providing the purpose of the middle mile broadband network, stating that middle mile broadband network serves a public purpose, and providing streamlining provisions to accelerate completion, such as the CEQA statutory exemption. It's worth noting that the legislature extended the statutory exemption beyond public entities. It also includes use by private and non-profit corporations as long as there are specific conditions met. The joint build with private entities will help the state deliver the middle mile broadband network by expanding the network's reach while reducing the state's expenses through cost-sharing construction, through the sharing of construction costs, allowing the timely and efficient delivery of the open access middle mile network, and providing strategic links to the delivery of a viable network. These partnerships also reflect the department's Dig Smart policy, which encourages the co-location of infrastructure in an effort to incentivize and expedite new investments. The result is the people of California will benefit from the efficient delivery of the middle mile broadband network while also lowering the state's capital costs by leveraging the cost-sharing model and minimizing disruptions from ongoing and duplicative construction. Next slide. So all that to get here. What's next? Caltrans will be requesting commission approval for a set of terms and conditions that will make up a master license agreement. Individual site license agreements can then be negotiated for those terms and conditions. A joint builder will have one master license agreement, which the department will use to initiate and approve site license agreements. Any license that falls outside of those approved and established terms and conditions would need to come forward to the commission for approval. So looking ahead, Caltrans will request the commission approval for the fair market value fee matrix and master license agreement terms and conditions for broadband infrastructure installations. We will continue to work with commission staff. The current plan is in June to bring forward the terms and conditions for license agreements that will be at less than fair market value to the commission for approval. And then in August, bring the completed fair market value fee matrix forward, along with the terms and conditions for license agreements when fair market value is being applied.
Thank you.
Next slide. So with that, I'll open up any comments or questions. I appreciate the time that you've given me.
Mr. Wiley, thank you, and don't go away. I do have a few comments and questions, but I want to hear from my colleagues first. Commissioner Tiffany?
Thank you. I have several questions. I come from a rural area, and I know there's many rural counties. One of the problems, as we all know, with access to internet is in rural areas, there's often, it's a problem because, I mean, frankly, there's not many people that are going to take advantage of it in far reaches of a county. And so there's no real incentive for access to be built by, as opposed to, let's say, a metro area. We also see the same problem in low-income areas where people, frankly, can't afford to access the internet. So again, no incentive. So I'm wondering, and I'm not sure that this question applies to this situation, but how do you ensure that there's equity in these different parts of the state where there's not a lot of competition, there's not incentive to bill at a reasonable price? Anyway, I think you can follow where my question is, and I'm not sure if that applies there, but can you ensure that there is fairness? And then also, kind of a somewhat related question is this infrastructure where there's leasing involved, are there potentially competing companies that can access that? I mean, or is it just one company that is going to pay for that lease?
Yeah. So let me answer the second question first.
Okay. Thank you.
Easier with the question.
Yeah.
For the middle mile broadband network, that's why it's open access. It's agnostic, if you will. So the idea is anybody will have any last mile that wants to connect to that can. Not necessarily whoever installs it, whatever. California Department of Technology is the one that's going to manage and operate that middle mile network. So it's going to be a California department. The open access part is what keeps it from being limited to just one vendor, if you will. So that's where the idea of this middle mile broadband that's statewide, open for anybody to access for last mile, that's where they're hoping to get the incentives for the last mile folks to come in to serve the rural communities. As far as the way they will ensure equity, that would have to be handled by the California Department of Technology and their third-party administrator that they're going to bring on to administer the network. Caltrans's role is to take the network design and make sure it can get constructed within our right-of-way where where it's touching our right-of-way. So I apologize, I can't really answer the first question
Sure.
very well.
I thought you might say that, but, but I thought I would ask anyway. But thank you for the explanation.
Mr. Kiefer, you wanted to weigh in on that before we
Yeah, I
hear
could
from
add a little bit more, Commissioner Tiffany, and I think Jeff and I are both at a disadvantage because our role really is to be the builders on behalf of CDT of this, and then with that role, we need the license agreement in order to fulfill that. However, the Public Utilities Commission plays an important role in this as well, and there are funds that, and grants that they are managing in order to try to achieve exactly what you're talking about. So their focus is on that last mile, and how do we, once you've built that middle mile backbone, okay, we've gotten you most of the way there, how do we make those vital last connections to the individual houses, schools, et cetera?
Yeah, in fact, it's coincidentally, I just heard a few days ago that an area, a rural, low-income area of Samuel County, there, I think the PUC is looking at a significant grant to help with the lower income. So that kind of falls into what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
If I may, or do other commissioners have comments or questions to Mr. Wiley before I do? Okay, great. Again, I like to go last. And by the time you get to me, so much of it has been answered that I can shortchange that. So first, transparency. I'm honored that my day job is with a innovation economy employer founded and headquartered in California that is solely focused on bridging the digital divide. But that work is last mile, not the middle mile that we're talking about. But it provides hopefully a little bit of context and data to it. And as a friend of many of us, Sonny Wright McPeak, who has been working in this space for a long time, likes to say, never forget that Internet for All is the best green transportation option. And we learned that during COVID, when you're looking at everything from education to employment to telehealth to emergency services and public safety, all the trips you don't need to take if you're on the right side of the digital divide. And the slide that Mr. Wiley had that showed that this is certainly an issue, Commissioner Tiffany, in rural America and rural California, but it's not limited to that. You saw his slide on our tribal communities. We have 110 federally recognized tribes in California, and it is very difficult there. It's very difficult in our suburban areas, and there's what's called stranded streets in our urban areas that are overlooked, not because of distance to serve them, but, and I'm a capitalist, often they're overlooked because they can't really make money, some of the providers, and so they are skipped. So it's a real challenge. The 2020 executive order that Mr. Wiley mentioned by our governor really emphasized that this is something we have to address. That executive order is broadband for all. It's not broadband for some. And that's why this commission is one of only five state entities, along with Caltrans and CalSTA and the PUC and the CDT, to deliver on his executive order. And that's why we will have a role that we must take seriously if we're going to achieve the broadband for all goals of the executive order. Senate Bill 156 of July of 2021, it included $6 billion, mainly federal funds, but some state directed some federal funds, three major categories. 3.25 of the 6 that we're talking about today was for middle mile, 10,000 miles. And then $2 billion for last mile, and $750 million to help municipalities with a loan loss reserve fund. And this is where it gets tricky, because the goals are the right ones, and the work that's gone on has been essential and so well attempted. But this often happens with ambitious goals. The $3.25 billion to cover 10,000 lane miles with open access middle mile, as sometimes happen, is not enough. and that's why 600 million was added about a year ago from our general fund to 3.85 billion to help fill that gap. That gets us to 8,250 of the 10,000. That leaves 1,750 not yet covered in the middle mile. That's why, to his credit, last fall, our governor said, I'm going to commit for the balance to do that final 1,750 middle miles, because without the middle miles, it's harder to do the last mile. And he proposed in the January version of his budget, 1.5 billion in a year of very difficult. That's how deep his commitment was and is. Unfortunately, last Friday in the May revise, a lot of difficult decisions had to be made. So the current iteration of the May revise, we'll see what the legislature and the governor do, of that 1.5 billion added for the 1,750 middle miles not yet covered, only 250 remains. 250 million. The rest can be at the discretion of the director of the Department of Finance should money become available to fill. That's, we all know, going to be tricky, but it's great that that discretion is there. But we're going to have a tough time, and we need to acknowledge that up front as coming back to us, it sounds like in June, how we do this as effectively to help our state and meet not only our moral obligation, but our legal obligation as a stakeholder in that executive order. This write-up was excellent. The slides are even better, and please send us a copy. But I would mention the speed standards of 100 megabits per second. That's half of the speed standard. It's 100 megabits per second download. So you download your email. I download my Netflix account. But there's also upload. We upload onto Google Meets and Zooms, and that's upload. And that, by Senate Bill 156 and the Federal Communications Commission standards and the federal law, are 100 by 20. Okay, so we cannot forget the 20. There's also a latency requirement in Senate Bill 156 as well, so you're not glitching all the time. But I'm not going to bore you with 100 milliseconds or less, because I already have bored you with that. So 100 by 20 is not actually captured in the write-up. It just talks about 100. So as we continue to talk about this, if we can capture the 100 by 20, both in the federal bipartisan infrastructure law as well as in Senate Bill 156, it was. And I'm going to bring it back to why does this matter? And it matters because of people in rural California, tribal, suburban, and urban. Currently, as Mr. Wiley showed, loved your graph, unserved Californians, the low 25 by 3 megabits per second. That's 306,890 locations. Almost the vast majority of the locations are families. Underserved, below the 100 by 20 standards, is another 154,591. The multiplier in California for an average California family size is 3.52. That's 1,624,413 Californians are depending on us, those 5 entities, to get it right. Because I'm bringing you back to the governor's prescient executive order of broadband for all and the federal law that was internet for all. If we don't do this right, then it's internet for some. And we're picking winners and losers. SB 156 actually says once in a lifetime funds. The federal law actually says once in a lifetime funds. We have to get this right. And that's why what Mr. Wiley is talking about and what it sounds like we're going to be considering on the middle mile side is so incredibly important to our work. Thank you, Mr. Wiley.
Chair Gardino, just a quick note. You asked about the presentation. It is available on our website currently.
Great. Thank you, Douglas. I appreciate that. Other questions, comments, or even feedback from Mr. Wiley, Mr. Silverman, Mr. Kiefer, or Commission colleagues? This was an information item today.
I was just going to say, I learned more about the internet in the last 10 minutes than I ever thought I'd do. So thank you for both of you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Yeah. Oh, of course, public comment. We do. We have two. Great. We have Mr. William Walker and Ms. Martha Armas Kelly. If both could come forward so that we have the efficiency of time. Great. Mr. Walker.
Gardino, Vice Chair, Bisbee, and Commissioners. My name is William Walker. I'm the chair of the EAC. 2.8 million people lost their free internet benefits in California this year, this past month, actually. They either had the fully free because the $30 benefit covered the lowest speed of internet. If you're in an urban area, probably wouldn't cover it in places like Arcata or Bishop, if they even have high-speed internet in those places. Arcata probably does. So my point being that this is great legislation and the report on Middle Mile, and I missed a part of it, so if you mentioned the 3 million Californians that lost internet, pardon me. It's really important, as Chair Gardino just said, to get this right. My fellow member of the committee, and I'm sure Martha wanted to say this, I'm sorry I'm stealing your thunder, Connie Stewart is a big cheerleader of this effort and was very insistent on having broadband be included as one of our committee objectives, like working on broadband. So we have a housing and infrastructure subcommittee that works on these issues, and I hope that anyone that's working on broadband at the state level can partner with our EAC. There's a lot of worry and despair about how communities that are in situations where school, for me today, was remote. There was no campus for UC Irvine today because of the events that happened yesterday. And if there's no access to the internet, you no longer have access to opportunity in this state. Thank you.
Mr. Walker, thank you. And if I can just build on what he said as Martha comes forward, what William was referring to was in the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it's the Affordable Connectivity Program. And by the end of this month, unless Congress acts, and that looks challenging at this point, those funds, 23 million American households, multiply that by about 3. More than 70 million of our fellow Americans are going to lose that affordable monthly support. It's $30 per household, $75 per home for our colleagues who live in tribal communities.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair. I had a few seconds left. I'm sorry I'm interrupting. I'm a member of the program. It's over. I'm no longer receiving the benefit.
Yeah, it's over at the end of this month. So it was 30. If I may, thank you. It's 30 until the beginning of May. It is trimmed now from 30 to 15 for the balance of May, and then the funds are gone. The federal funds. Yes. Please. I think we're what I think Mr. Walker and I are saying is these funds have been a lifeline to people, and the money has run out. Yes.
Hi, Martha Arms Kelly. And I'm really kind of interested in what you were speaking about as far as the fees. And we're looking at many rural and smaller communities that may not be able to afford or have the capacity to be able to afford the middle broadband. And I'm concerned for that because if we don't have the capacity, are there any kind of is there any considerations for those communities that don't have the capacity to or don't even have that implemented already? Because what you're talking about is a 3-tier structure, right? And that at the end, what we usually receive, and that middle
broadband is not available to everyone. It's not even, in some cases, in some areas, it's not even, connected. It's not even there. So I'm just kind of concerned about those considerations. And then when you're talking about the airspace, when you're looking at the deliberation of an airspace, how are we quantifying that? Is there a certain limit or cutoff point where it's no longer Caltrans? And how are they measuring that? I guess that's kind of like what I'm trying to. So there's twofold.
Great.
Twofold.
Martha, and Mr. Wiley, if you could come back up and put up your slide. Again, the middle mile is to lay almost always fiber, open though, as far as you can, as quickly as you can, and as cost effectively as you can. That's why the map of the state that Mr. Wiley put up shows those 10,000 miles of middle mile. The middle mile is not what goes to your home.
No.
The last mile is.
The last
So,
mile.
Mr. Wiley, if you wanted to come back up and show that again, I think it'll answer Martha's question.
Couple things. Actually, if you go back, sorry. So this slide here shows what Chair Guardino was just talking about. This is what the middle mile network is going to look like. All the last mile connections are going to come to the middle mile segment. So the middle mile is delivering the broadband so that last mile providers can provide it to those communities.
Right, but when you were saying that you were going to put a fee so that you were going to portion it to the size of the community?
Oh, no. So the fee I'm talking about is what we call a license fee. So it has nothing to do with the communities. It has to do with our encroachment permits. When builders come into our right-of-way, we have to provide them with a license agreement. It's part of an encroachment permit to build. In those instances, there's a license fee that's attached to that. That's not on the communities, that's on the builders.
So that jurisdiction itself wouldn't have to. Sorry. So the jurisdiction in itself wouldn't have to afford that. That's my concern, because I was thinking that those smaller communities would be at a deficit.
Yeah.
And thank you for the clarification, because that was one of the concerns.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for this opportunity, because sometimes in the gist of the language and the understanding, people that are listening may not understand. And I feel that I have somewhat of an understanding of some principles, but I'm still learning. This is new to me.
We all are. We all are.
Just excuse the opportunity to be the devil's advocate and want to ask a question, because it's really a question that I think others would want to know as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wiley, unless there are other questions from commissioners, if there's any wrap-up comments you would like to make.
Thank you for the time. Thanks for the opportunity, and we'll come back next meeting.
We appreciate that. Thank you. I didn't know that was coming back to us as an action item, so I learned a lot today, too. Thank you. We are going to try to go through our information items, if that's still the pleasure. You needed to step out. Can you step out? Are you sure?
Information item?
Okay. Jaden, no pressure, but your boss said it'll take you 2 seconds.
Absolutely. All right.
The reason that we're doing this is I didn't want the two of them to be the only visionaries. My book for day one that I brought goes through item 56. So I predicted that you were going to do this. I'm just kidding. I willed it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We'll take the information calendar now. So commissioners, tabs 24 through 33 are information items that have been reviewed and found to have no issues raised by commission staff. Therefore, individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner. Please make note of the change list for tab 24. If there are no questions, that will conclude the presentation of the information calendar.
You know, that was 14 seconds, not 2, so we'll work on that. Colleagues, is there anything that you have questions about or would like to pull from the information calendar? And we'll go to public comment as well. Commissioner Bradshaw?
Sorry.
All good. Comments, questions in the room? Someone's walking over? No. Okay. Thank you.
We did not receive any request to comment on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Good. There's nothing. Yeah,
Okay,
and we've done it.
practice.
Yeah. Before we adjourn tonight, and, these are real people, as we all know, who have either lost their lives or been hurt trying to serve us and our mobility needs. And we want to adjourn in their honor tonight with their names. And I'll be looking, Mr. Kiefer, and to you and others in case I miss someone or pronounce names wrong, Mr. Kiefer. On that Caltrans litter crew that Commissioner Cruz brought to our attention, with Chrysalis, which sounds like a second chance program. We'd like to adjourn in the memory of Levi King, who lost his life. Two others were injured. We want to wish them well. William Hope and William McMahon. And in District 4 recently, another of our colleagues lost, I believe it's a he, his life, Satnam Singh, as well. Was there anyone else? Yeah. May we just take a moment of silence as we remember them and adjourn in their honor. And we're with their families tonight as well, something I know Caltrans takes very, very seriously. With that, day one is completed. We want to thank you all for being with us all the way to the end of today. And we'll pick up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with item 21, yes, and then go to 57. We are adjourned.
Woo, you made it. I have